Today, we go back to the beginning. We have an exclusive interview with original New York Islander, former defenseman Bill Mikkelson. He talks about the earliest days of the franchise, Bill Torrey, Al Arbour, the arrival of Dennis Potvin, and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. We've got a special show today. We have original Islander Bill Mikkelson, a defenseman who played for the Islanders in their first season, was in training camp with the team in their second season. He goes back and talks about his experiences at the beginning of Islanders history and some of the great names in Islanders history as well. So without further ado, here is Bill Mikkelson. It is my pleasure now to welcome to the show an original New York Islander, Bill Mikkelson. And Bill, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. You come from a hockey family. Talk to me a little bit about that background and how you got started in the game.
I guess it goes back to my uncle, Jim McFadden, right? He came over from Ireland way back in the day in the 1920s or whatever. Miraculously made it to the NHL back in the 6-team league, played with Detroit and Chicago. He's my mother's brother. And he won a Stanley Cup there, and he won the Calder Trophy as Rookie of the Year in 1948. So that was sort of the beginning. And I remember as a kid growing up in a farming community back in Manitoba, listening to the radio. We didn't have a TV at the time, if you can imagine, but listening to the radio of his hockey games. So and I would have been 4 or 5 years old, because I remember it was in our old home, and listening to him on the radio. So if you want to go right back to the very beginning, and my interest and love for hockey started with him, for sure.
When did you first realize that you had a chance to turn pro and maybe even make the NHL?
That's a good question. That's a very good one. I think it probably somewhere, it was probably after I made it or when I made it. I've referred to myself as an accidental hockey player because I never considered myself a hockey player. I played and I played junior, but I was never a very good hockey player. I think on all the teams I played on, even in minor hockey, there were probably half a dozen better players on the team than me. But, as we progress, it seems like each year I would make another team, move up gradually. And through my youth hockey or whatever, I just kept going up. And when I was 17, I made a junior team of all things. And the team I played on prior to that was a junior B team, which was feeding the Brandon Wheat King junior A team. And I wasn't the best defenseman, or not the best defenseman, not close to the best player, but I made the the Wheat Kings the next year and ended up playing with them for 3 years and a couple years in Winnipeg, and all the time sort of concentrating more on school. I think I considered myself more of an academic than I did an athlete. And I always paid attention. I got my high school while in Brandon. I got 3 years of university while playing junior, not thinking I would make a professional career. But after my third year of university and my last year of junior, I I had gone to the Rangers camp. I was never drafted. Players my age were not drafted. The draft just came in then. But I'd gone to the Rangers camp because I was invited, and I thought it would be interesting to go. I went to the camp from the dorm at the University of Manitoba because I'd already moved in there. I'd already enrolled in my university year that year, commerce at the University of Manitoba. So I went to Rangers training camp from the dorm, and expecting I'd be back afterward and I'd just carry on and I'd be done with hockey and become a student, full time. And as it turned out, I did end up back there after about a week because Emil Francis was going to send me to the Eastern League. So I wasn't really going to turn pro. I was going to New Haven, right?
Right.
Farm team in the Eastern League. They had Buffalo in the American League. And what was their team in the Central League?
Omaha, yeah.
So I wasn't going to make any of their pro teams. So I said, no, thank you. Emil was upset with that. He said, why did you come here? I went back to University of Manitoba and carried on with my academic year, going to classes and everything. And that fall, the Wheat Kings and the Winnipeg Junior Jets in Winnipeg had made a trade. Neither of the two players reported. Well, the one player from Winnipeg reported to Brandon, but the player Brandon had traded to Winnipeg did not report. So there was an opening there. The coach of the Winnipeg Junior Jets was Eddie Dorohoy, who I had as coach in Brandon. So he started phoning me at the university, trying to get me to come out and play for the team. And I said, no, thank you. I'm retired. I'm done. And he kept calling. And finally I gave in. And they gave me some spending money because I had no money. I was broke. We weren't a well-off family by any means. So I was making my own way and earning my own money. And I decided to, I'd go out and play. So I ended up playing 2 more years with the Junior Jets, which brought me to 5 years in the World Hockey at that time, or in the Western Hockey League that just started up. You could play for 5 years, like an extra year, if you were going to university, which I was. So I qualified. And I ended up playing 2 more years with them. But after the year with the Rangers, they dropped me off their list. LA put me on their list. So the next year I went to LA's camp. And I didn't make the team that year. So I came back and got another year of business at U of M. But the next year I did make LA. They did turn me pro. So that's when I finally made it. You were going back to the beginning of your question, and they sent me to Springfield and their American League team. And that's where I spent my first year pro.
And eventually you did get called up for some games with the Kings. One of the players who you were teammates with was Butch Goring. What do you remember about him?
Well, I remember he's from Winnipeg as well.
Yep.
So I remember him from junior. What I remember most about Butch is how just almost impossible he was to stop on a one-on-one. He was just so, and you'll know from his time, what a great player he was. But I played some junior with him in Winnipeg, so I knew him from there. And and in Springfield, the first year when I turned pro, he was there. Denny Potvin was there that whole year. Not Denny Potvin, Jean Potvin.
John, yeah.
And Billy Smith was our goalie. And we won the Calder Trophy that year. It was in the American Hockey League. And those two guys, Billy Smith and Butch Goring, were by far and away the 2 best players on our team and anywhere. They were way better than anybody we ever played against either. So that's, and then, Butch was in LA. I was really in LA for a couple months. I was there as an injury replacement. Jill Marat had been injured, so I was called up to play in his place. So I think I played 15 games there.
Yep.
Over November, December. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you find out that you were selected by the Islanders in the expansion draft?
I had played a round of golf and I was sitting in the clubhouse having a post-game beverage with some guys, and it came up on the TV. That's how I found out.
And how did you react?
What a surprise. What a surprise. A pleasant one, too. And I had been drafted by the Islanders, and that was the first year of World Hockey, too, right?
Yes.
So, and I had just finished playing 2 years with the Junior Jets, who now became the WHA Jets. So the management there had talked to me about playing with the Jets on the World Hockey team. And I hadn't signed a contract with them, but, we were discussing, I had an agent and he was talking to them about my potentially playing with them. And then this happened. And it looked like I had a choice between whether I signed with these guys or signed with these guys. And I pursued the Islanders foremost because it was a chance to go to New York, right? And play in the NHL, which is, for any Canadian kid playing hockey, that's where you wanted to be, the NHL. The WHA was an unknown quantity, although, the Jets had signed Bobby Hull and, added legitimacy to, the Winnipeg team, certainly, and the league by doing that. Derek Sanderson, I think, was another one who signed up. And
yeah.
So they signed up some big names.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch Money is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com using the code LOCKEDONNHL, monarchmoney.com. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in your show notes, and thanks for helping us out. What was that first training camp with the Islanders like?
I can't say I remember it that well. That was 72, and I think that was the year of the Russia-Canada series.
Yes.
What I do remember at camp was following that very closely. Probably more so than the camp itself. But the camp, I've been to a couple camps already. It was a typical camp. It was just a month that was just draining on you. Mostly because you spent 2 weeks, twice a day then. This is before the Players Association came along, which, restricted it to, I think, an hour and a half to 2 hours on the ice a day. And that was it, like one session. We were out there twice a day. We'd be up in the dark, out doing calisthenics. And it was just, it was a grueling session. And as much emotionally or mentally as it is physically, especially for somebody who is a bubble player. If you're a guy who's signed and you're on the team, the top 2/3 of the team or whatever, you're just getting in shape. But for the rest of it, it's a grueling physical and mental, more mental than anything probably. With the big event every night at camp, at the hotel you stay in the lobby, they'd post the two lineups for the next day. The big team and the little team, or the minor league team. And right. The first thing you did, you'd wait around for the management to come out and put the lineups on the bulletin board. and go and see which team you were on. And that was talk about exciting, if that's the right term.
Talk to me about the first coach of the Islanders, Phil Goyette.
Phil, I guess I liked Phil. I thought Phil was a great guy, quiet, reserved, the whole bit. He had spent a number of years with the Montreal Canadiens, who were my favorite team growing up. So I knew Phil very well as a player. And if you knew him at all, he was sort of that. He was a Jean-Gabriel kind of centerman, a silky smooth passer, the whole bit. And so I had a great deal of respect for him, as a player. Any coach who was assigned to coach an expansion team is in tough. They really are. And I didn't have these feelings at the time, but in retrospect, I don't want to say he was over his head, but I guess we all were to a degree. We're all in over our heads. We're all victims of the Peter principle, if you want to describe it that way. And probably same with Phil. Phil had no coaching experience, not that I was aware of. So this was his first coaching job. A bunch of hapless guys, misfits, if you want, rejects from their previous teams, that he had to put together and turn into something respectable, which is impossible. So he had an impossible job, but he tried hard at it. He was, I can't recall him ever, being mad or upset or anything, which he probably should have at times. But at the same time, I think he sympathized with us, the players, that he knew when you look at our lineup and compared it to, the Broad Street Bullies and the Big Bad Bruins and the Habs at that era, what could you expect from us? And I think that was Phil's attitude, let's do the best we can. Let's be nice to these guys. They're trying hard, which we did. We tried our butts off, but when it just comes to winning games, that's not enough. Trying hard isn't enough. You have to have a little bit of skill too. And we did have some younger guys that were coming up, like Billy Harris, Billy Smith, guys like that who did have that, but they were 20 years old, and their first years in the league too. We were just grossly overmatched. But and I think Phil, was being kind to us. He told us we were praised if we just came close in some games, which was true. If you went into Boston and, we won a game there, 9-8 or whatever it was. And we had some tight, close games with Montreal too, like 1 or 2 goal losses, and same with Philly. And those were like victories for us, when you compare the relative talents of the two teams and experience. Montreal had, I think, 9 or 10 future Hall of Famers on their team, right?
Yeah.
Look at that lineup. Good grief. So, we shouldn't be on the same ice, but we were, and we did pretty well a few times. And people will argue, well, they didn't get up for you, or they were out partying the night before, or whatever. They weren't taking you guys seriously, but we came pretty close and scared a few of them, I think. But Phil, all in all, I think Phil, I think it was a challenge for anybody, and he's not to be blamed for it any more than I think any other individual would be. But we probably needed somebody who was more experienced coaching. Somebody had a few years behind the bench already, because I think he was learning along with us when it came to, experiencing the NHL. And for me personally, Phil was a silky smooth centerman, but he was not a defenseman.
Right.
And when it came to coaching defensemen, there wasn't much value add from Phil, but that's not his fault either, right? Mm-hmm.
Can't coach what you don't know, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Talk to me about your first NHL goal.
Oh, I barely remember it. It was I know it was in Vancouver.
Yes.
and it was a shot from the blue line. And I say the shot was going so slow that the goalie's leg went out to stop it, and it was retracting by the time it I didn't have a blazing shot by any means, as you can tell from the number of goals I scored in the league.
Talk to me about some of your teammates. I mean, Brian Spencer, for example. I mean, a lot of stories told about him. What do you remember about being his teammate on and off the ice?
I have very fond memories of him. Spinner,
Yep.
as they call him. In Greg's book, The Hapless Islanders that you have there, he spends a lot of time on Spinner, and he referred me to a movie that was made about him. It was a B-class movie from a production point of view, but I think it was pretty accurate in describing him and the kind of character he was. But I always found him as an outgoing, happy, good guy. Good to be around. He didn't come across as being. He was a bit eccentric, for sure, but in a good way, and in a friendly way, and in a harmless way. Mm-hmm. But on the ice, he was tough, and he wouldn't take anything from anybody. We didn't have any tough guys on our team until Howard Nystrom came along later in the year. So Spinner was probably our best pugilist. I thought he was a good guy, and sad to hear what had happened to him and how his life turned out. Just a tragedy, and especially his father too. The issue that he had with that. That I guess Hockey Night in Canada not televising his son's game.
Yeah.
What a tragic event for him, and can you imagine what that would do to Brian? As his son. But he, I fond memories of him. And he was a character. Good guy to have on a team, I think. Keeps things lively.
How about Ed Westfall?
Eddie Westfall, like Goyette, he's somebody I'd watched on TV. I knew him very well from, as a player, as everybody on the team did. And, he was the indisputable leader of the team, in my mind, both on and off the ice. A guy that everybody looked up to. Another good guy. Another great sense of humor. You think back in the year, all the supposed trials and tribulations we should have had, it was kind of a pleasant year. And I think in a certain sense, because we had a lot of guys who had good sense of humor. Terry Crisp is another one. Another, good leader, good guy, funny guy, kept things light and loose. We sort of made fun of ourselves, being hapless. We knew we were. But Eddie was the leader, no question, far and away, both on and off the ice.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because, I can bet on so many different things, player props, a same-game parlay, or even jumping in as live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. And look, it's quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energies to your Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. How emotionally, when you're playing 78 games and winning 12, how do you emotionally handle all that losing and just the way that weighs on you as a hockey player?
Oddly enough, Gil, I don't remember that. Like, it's 52 years ago. Maybe it weighed on me at the time, but I don't remember it being that way. And I think with a lot of us, me, I'll speak for myself. I'm just happy to be there, right? I'm given an opportunity to do something that almost nobody gets to do. Play in the NHL. All the Canadian kids, and you could say worldwide now in hockey countries, their dream is to play in the NHL. And there I was. And, just the experience of it all is, I think, negates any negativity, negative thoughts, or anything like that. I'm sure it did weigh on us, knowing that, that was the status or state of our existence. But I don't. Today, it does not register at all. It was a great experience being there. I consider it one of the best years of my life. When you think about it, to be, playing in New York, in the Nassau Coliseum, brand new Coliseum, playing against all these guys, my idols, Bobby Orr, on and on. It's just, like, how could I not be happy about that or be negative in any sense? And even if I don't belong there, so what? Who cares? I was there. I try to have a good attitude about it.
Absolutely.
So I am hapless. Who cares?
You alluded earlier to the 9-7 win you had over the Bruins. What do you remember about that game, and how did the Islanders pull off that upset?
Well, this is another very good question, because until I got into this with this all started with Greg when I read his book, and I'd sent him. He gave out his email. Maybe he didn't want to or regrets doing, but he sent out his email at the end of the book. I listened to it on Audible, the Hapless Islander book. He mentioned me a couple times in the book. But anyway, he mentioned that game in the book, and he also referred me to, there was a 5-minute video that Eddie Westfall made just about that game, and I had not remembered it at all until just this year that it had even happened. But looking back on it, it was a miracle. We jumped out to what was a 5-0 lead or something like that in the first period. And then they woke up and decided to play hockey and came back and almost beat us.
Yeah.
But so no, I'm afraid I cannot comment on it. So in looking back, I came out of that game +1 of all things.
Yeah.
But going into Boston, Montreal, Philadelphia, those were usually very lopsided games, and badly too. 7-2, 10-1, things like that. We were badly outmatched at times. So to go into Boston and win that game, it should have stuck with me, I guess, but it didn't. But it's good to remember now, though.
What were the fans like at the Nassau Coliseum?
They were Ranger fans, I think, for the most part. And my most memorable event surrounding fans or fan related was the first game we played against the Rangers there. They came out on the ice and I think they got a standing O. The crowd cheering them and everything. And, I think when we came out, polite applause or whatever, but I think there were Ranger fans who couldn't get to Ranger games who lived on Long Island. So now they've got their own team. So they started attending. And, over the years, as the team improved and got better, they became great fans. But they were, I thought they were great fans then. They were good. We got, except for that one incident that I remember well. I was just shocked. This is our home rink. What's going on here?
In the second year, you go to training camp. Al Arbour is now the coach. How was being coached by Al Arbour different than Phil Goyette and Earl Ingerfield?
Well, I was cut after training camp. I was sent to the minors. So all I know of Al was from training camp. So I have no experience with him as a coach, behind the bench. He's a guy who's just, running practices or whatever at training camp. and spending more of their time on evaluation than coaching. And as I thought back this year, that's one, like I don't have any regrets at all, but I really would have liked to have been coached by Al, because I think he was a great coach. Again, he's a guy I watched in the NHL for many years. He was a shot blocker, a very good one. That's what he was known for. And I did a lot of shot blocking, and I sometimes think it was sort of modeling myself after Al Arbour. And I would have loved to have been coached by him, but I got the axe at the end of that camp. They cleared everybody out from the year before, on the blue line anyway. The only guy that stayed for the year, that had been there the whole year before, was Jerry Hart.
Right.
Jean Potvin came in at the end of the year, and he remained. But of all the guys who had played the whole year before, Jerry Hart's the only guy who stayed or remained with the team. A couple guys started the season, but were gone right away. So I wish I had made the team and had been coached by Al, because I think if there was any faint light of talent in me at all, he might have been able to bring it out. Who knows?
And you kind of lost your job to Dennis Potvin.
Yeah, that's right. I still tell everybody to this day that's what happened to me. If it hadn't been Denny, I might still be there. And I said, who wouldn't have lost their job to Denny Potvin? There's nobody around. He was the best, there's Bobby and Brad Park, and
right.
Those are other good names in the day, but Denny was right there in the top. So everybody would have lost their job to Denny Potvin. So me losing my job to him, yeah.
What was he like in training camp?
Training camp was, I don't remember much about that camp. It was probably a stressful camp, because I knew the players they bought in, and that, my making the team that year was going to be a real challenge. It was going to be difficult to impossible, because Dave Lewis came along, and Bert Marshall, Denny, we still had Jean left over, Jerry Hart. Those are guys that were going to be there for sure. So there's 5 jobs gone already. And back then, it seems to me we played primarily with, like the year I was there, we played primarily with 4 and 5 defensemen.
Right.
So I was going to be 6 at best if I were lucky to make the team. So I don't remember thinking too much about other things. What I do remember about Denny is his physique, in the dressing room. He's the same as Jean. They're both just, like bricks, both of them. Denny would have been 19 or 20. He had, I don't know, he looked like a weightlifter, like this strength. And from his years in the league, nobody messed with him.
No.
At all. Wouldn't go near him. So that's the most memorable thing I have about him. As a personality, same as you've always seen. He's a very professional sounding and looking individual. And, for a 19-year-old, he was as well.
We mentioned you came from a hockey family, and some of your children are also involved in hockey. Talk to me about what that meant to you and what they do.
What they do?
What they did and do, yeah.
Oh, yes. My son, Brendan, he played 130 games in the NHL. He was with Anaheim, Tampa, and the Calgary Flames. He played about 130 games, and he won a Memorial Cup in Vancouver in the CHL. Megan played with the Canadian women's national team. She won 2 gold medals and a silver. She won gold at the 2010 Olympics and 2014 Olympics, and a silver in 2018 that was in Russia. No, that was in Seoul, Korea. They won gold in Sochi. Yeah, they came back. They were down 2-0 to the Americans and came back. Megan assisted with 3 minutes left in the game. We were down 2-0. She assisted on the 2-1 goal that made it 2-1. They scored again to tie it up, and then won it in overtime. Big game, and they won in Vancouver as well, and a silver. And then she'd gone to the University of Wisconsin and won 2 NCAA championships with them, and she was All-American 1 year at Wisconsin. She's now in broadcasting with the Calgary Flames, doing color commentary on their streaming radio broadcast with Sportsnet. She broadcast her first NHL game a couple of weeks ago, the Flames' final season game in LA against the Kings. She did color on TV first time. Nice. So she's really enjoying doing that. My son is now an investment advisor. He played 15 years of pro. He spent his last 7 years in Europe, playing in Sweden, Austria, Germany, and the final year in the UK. And like me, he spent his time wisely, knowing that hockey careers are short, and when it's over, you have to go get a job, unless you're making millions of dollars, right? And so he paid attention to his education as well, and ended up his last year. He took an MBA at Cardiff University and played with the Cardiff Devils in the English League, and then came back to Canada and got a job with an investment firm, and he's now an investment advisor. So they're both doing great now. They're both enjoying their new careers, and I have an older daughter as well, Jillian, who is more on the writing, music. Those are things that she grew up with. She's now works for a craft brewery here in Calgary as their social media expert. She creates all their social media presence on the internet. So that's the three of them. I'm proud of all three of them, and life's been great. Following the two kids that played hockey, Megan and Brendan. All the games we went to, watched them play, and like growing up. I worked for IBM, and I spent many nights parked over at the outdoor rink watching them skating, 20 below weather.
Yeah,
skating around the rink. So that's been fun. It's been fun following their careers.
Bill, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and for sharing some of your memories with the first year New York Islanders, and maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun, since I sent that email to Greg, the contact with him. There's also Stan Fischler. Mm-hmm. I've talked to him and many times, and in doing so, I've looked back over the season, and it's been great reminiscing about that year with the Islanders, and how fortunate I was. Lucky guy. And great chatting with you too, Gil. I've enjoyed this.
I want to say thanks again to original New York Islander Bill Mikkelson for spending some time with us today. Some great insight into the early days of the franchise. And thanks again to Mr. Mikkelson for everything he did. I want to thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no offseason. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and it's always great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we are back on Friday. We'll have the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Training camp so close now, just a couple of weeks away, and we'll start getting you ready for it on our upcoming shows. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.